What's up, guys, and welcome back to my reading journey. Today, I'm reading the new story. So, hope you're all doing great, and we're beginning with The Duplicity of Hargraves. So, let's begin. When Major Pendleton Talbot of Mobile, Sir, and his daughter, Miss Linda Talbot, came to Washington to reside, they selected for a boarding place a house that stood 50 yards back from one of the quietest, cuties. It was an old-fashioned brick building with a portico upheld by tall white pillars. The yard was shaded by locusts, stately locusts and elms, and a catalpa tree in season rained its pink and white blossoms upon the grass. Rows of high box bushes lined the fence and walks. It was the southern style and aspect of the place that pleased the eyes of the Talbots. In this pleasant private boarding house they engaged rooms, including a study for Major Talbot, who was adding the finishing chapters to his book. Anecdotes and reminiscences of the Alabama Army bench and bar. Major Talbot was the old South. The present day had little interest of excellence in his eyes. His mind lived in that period before the Civil War, when the Talbots owned thousands of acres of fine cotton land and the slaves to till them. When the family mansion was the scene of princely hospitality, and drew its guests from aristocracy of the South. Out of that period he had brought all its old pride and sculptures of honor and antiquated and punctilious politeness, and, you would think, its wardrobe. Such clothes were surely never made within 50 years. The major was tall, but whenever he made that wonderful archaic genuflection, he called it a bow. The corners of his frock coat swept the floor. The garment was a surprise even to Washington, which has long ago ceased to shy at the frost and wore brimmed hats of Southern congressmen. One of the boarders christened it a Father Hubbard, and it certainly was high in the waist and full in the skirt. But the mayor was all his queer clothes, his immense area of plaited, raveling shirt bosom, and the little black string tie with the bow always slipping on one side. Both was smiled at and liked in Mrs. Warderman's select boarding house. Some of the young department clerks would often string him, as they call it, getting him started upon the subject dearest to him, the traditions and history of his beloved Southland. During his talks, he would quote freely from the anecdotes and reminiscences, but they were very careful not to let him see their designs, for in spite of his 68 years, he could make the boldest of them uncomfortable under the steady regard of his piercing gray eyes. Miss Linda was a plump, little old maid of 35, with smoothly drawn, tightly twisted hair that made her look still older. Old-fashioned, too, she was, but antebellum glory and didn't radiate from her as it did from the mayor. She possessed a thrifty common sense, and it was she so handled the finances and of the family, and met all comers when there were bills to pay. The mayor regarded board bills and wash bills as contemptible nuisances. They kept coming in so persistently, and so often. Why, the major wanted to know, could they not be filed and paid in a lump sum at some convenient period, say when the anecdotes and reminiscences had been published and paid for? Miss Linda would calmly go on with her sewing and say, "We'll pay as we go, as long as the money lasts, and then perhaps they'll have to lump it. To lump it." Most of Mrs. Warderman's spoilers were away during the day, being nearly all department clerks and businessmen. But there was one of them who was about the house a great deal from morning to night. This was a young man named Henry Hopkins Hargraves. Every one in the house addressed him by his full name, who was engaged at one of the popular vaudeville theaters. Vaudeville has risen to such a respectable plane in the last few years, and Mr. Hargraves was such a modest and well-mannered person that Mrs. Wardeman could find no objection to enrolling him upon her list of boarders. At the theater, Hargraves was known as all-round dialect comedian, having a large repertoire of German, Irish, Swede, and blackface specialties. But Mr. Hargraves was ambitious and often spoke of his great desire to success in legitimate comedy. This young man appeared to conceive a strong fancy for Major Talbot. Whenever the gentleman would begin his outer reminiscences or repeat some of the liveliest of the anecdotes, Hargraves could always be found the most attentive among his listeners. For a time, the mayor showed an inclination to discourage the advances of the play actor, as he privately termed him. But soon the young man's agreeable manner, and in the indubitable appreciation of the old gentleman's stories completely won him over. It was not long before the two were like old chums. The mayor sat apart each afternoon to read to him the manuscript of his book. During the anecdotes, Hargraves never failed to laugh at exactly the right point. The mayor was moved to declare to Miss Linda one day that young Hargraves possessed remarkable perception and a gratifying respect for the old regime. And when it came to talking of those old days, if Mayor Talbot liked to talk, Mr. Hargraves was an entranced to listen. Like almost all old people who talk of the past, they may love to linger over details. In describing the splendid, almost royal days of the old planters, he would hesitate until he had recalled the name of the Negro who held his horse, or the exact date of certain minor happenings, or the number of bales of cotton raised in such a year, but Hargraves never grew impatient or lost interest. On the con- on the contrary, he would advance questions on a variety of subjects connected with the life of that time, and he never failed to extract ready replies. Such an interesting man, right? Do you find that? All right, guys. Thank you for listening to me today, and see you tomorrow on the next part of this beautiful story. So, see you. Thank you for joining. Bye.